Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema. Sit down. They're on the TV screen. They're on my chest. You know what we're talking about. We're not wasting any time. We got so much to dive into today. So why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We are getting ready to dive in spoiler-filled into WandaVision, Episode 9. And before I say the title, this is a spoiler review. Like I said, this is going to be spoiler-filled. So if you didn't watch the episode, get out of here, man. Like, leave. Go now. You don't want this thing spoiled for you. Watch it. Then come back and check out the spoiler review. And if you need something in between, boom, go check out my non-spoiler review if you want some thoughts. But please, don't spoil anything for yourself. Don't do it to yourself, especially if you've been on this ride. So now that you guys have left and we're just here with the folks that have watched the episode, as I said, this episode title, the series finale. And kind of makes you think, like, this could be it for WandaVision. Like, it's a one-off, which is kind of how it's felt from the very beginning. But at the same time, Kevin Feige hasn't ruled out the idea of a Season 2 because this was so successful. And where we get to by the end of the season, you could do a second season with Wanda and Vision. There is definitely enough story for the two of them out there. It's just, where are those characters going to be by the time we get through Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness? That we don't know. But if it is indeed the series finale, and there is no, season 2, titling the episode, much in its tribute to sitcoms, the series finale, stroke of genius. Now, with that out there being said, this does have a fairly solidified ending. That there's not a cliffhanger or anything of that nature. We do have 2 post-credit scenes that tease things that are coming up, but not like cliffhanger-y type things. So I think that's like just like a little cool thing, especially the way that they've been playing with TV. But as far as talking about this episode, I think what we'll do is we'll talk some overall thoughts. Then I'm going to show you my reactions. I recorded myself this morning, and we got some good ones, from cheering and screaming to crying over really, really emotional stuff. I've cried 3 times, 2 times watching the show, 1 time watching myself watching the show while I was editing. This is a really powerful episode, and the story overall, when you watch the whole thing, is very powerful. And that's what I did, man. I watched. There's a delay in between the reviews today because I took a nap. Because last night I just stayed up full boat, man, and watched the whole thing right into the finale and then finished it. I think that definitely affects my overall viewpoint and the way I looked at this episode, because I think the first thing that people will say is that this season or series finale felt a little flat, or people might be a little disappointed. And that's probably because we've been theorizing a lot of things, and not just characters. I think last week kind of solidified that we weren't going to see Mephisto or Nightmare or Magneto or Professor X. Like, we weren't going to see anybody else. We had Agatha, Wanda, Vision, White Vision. That's what the finale was going to be, and it certainly felt that way. I mean, even my Chthon theory that I put out there was more about, just in case this happens, this knowledge is out there, but I don't think it's likely. And even though that's the case, and we had a pretty good feeling that we weren't going to see those characters, that Fietro wasn't going to be Pietro and probably wasn't going to be anybody, but theories on where we could be going and how this could get us to the multiverse weren't answered. We still don't know how we're getting to the multiverse. We still don't know how we're getting to mutants. There's still a lot of unanswered questions that were posed in this series that could very well carry over into, the Loki show or Spider-Man or Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And I feel for you, because I am one of you guys. I am a hardcore comic fan, and I dove deep on this show, and it was a ton of fun picking up all of the clues that were out there. And it turns out they almost all were red herrings, because they probably weren't clues. They probably were just Easter eggs. And if you think about how Kevin Feige operates, that's what he does. He tells a fairly comic accurate story or representation of a character, and adapts it in a way that you haven't seen adapted before, and then layers it with Easter eggs that kind of nod to, origins or things from the story that they're adapting, because they can't adapt everything literally. And while it certainly felt like that's what we were getting, it's not shocking that we got what we got here, and we got a story that is about Wanda, and it's about her processing her grief, which I said right from jump, if you remember last week, I put up the clip from my trailer reaction off the first one, and that was probably the cleanest theory and cleanest idea and closest to what we got. That this was going to be about Wanda processing all the grief she's gone through and coming out the other side, whether it being bad and we're in a crazy giant hex, or maybe she finds some kind of solace or the next piece of herself. And I love how that story plays, but I also feel for people who kind of are like, but we didn't get any answers. And, like literally Evan Peters was just a meta inside joke. And yes, I think Feige and Marvel messed with us a little bit. They knew what we were going to do. And if this was all just dropped at once, it probably plays a lot better. I mean, rewatching it as one entity last night certainly played really, really well. And even more so when you got into like the rewatch and like what they did in this episode. Oh, there's so many good things. And I just hope that people aren't overly upset that their theories didn't become a thing, and that you can go, it was fun to go down these rabbit holes. If anything, I think this show got us more in touch with our comic roots than any other property that Marvel's done. A lot of times you watch a movie and, you might just talk to a friend, call someone like myself up, and you'd be like, oh, well, this is like what they were kind of trying to adapt, and like, here were things in the background. This, because it was week by week, you're literally diving in, ripping these episodes apart, finding all these Easter eggs while we're watching it, and they feel like clues. So from that end, I wasn't disappointed at all, and what we got for Wanda was amazing, and what we got for Vision was amazing. I mean, you want to talk about one of the most eloquently written goodbyes that I've seen in a show or a movie. I mean, the ending, man, the finale between Wanda and the Vision that she created shredded me, man. You'll see in the reaction, I got some tears around that. And then I cried on the rewatch, and then I cried just listening to the audio while I was cutting down myself watching the episode. And it was beautiful. And to see her be born as Scarlet Witch the way that she was born, and the build up and lead to that reveal was just perfection for me. And I cannot wait. I said this in my non-spoiler review. I am so excited for Liz Olsen, man. She has got so much potential for this character now. So many doors are open and so many things are still in play. I think there is still a big bad out there that could tie to the Darkhold, could tie back to things that we theorized throughout the course of the season that could be in play by the time we get to Doctor Strange. And the way the multiverse, becomes a thing could still kind of play into the way that we theorize some things. And I think the biggest thing that hurt the show or hurt in this realm of like people theorizing things is that people got the Agatha Harkness thing right out the gate. I didn't put that together right off the first trailer, and then I saw someone else say it, and I was like, oh, that actually does make a lot of sense. Like, that would be a real clever way to put Agatha in there. And I think the fact that people got that right made us all think like everything was going to be something. And just because it wasn't, didn't mean it was a letdown, man. Like I said, this is a beautiful finale, and the way they wrapped everything up, I really, really enjoyed. And, I mean, we get spectacle, man. I mean, Wanda and Agatha fighting in the sky with the hex and the red swirling black clouds. Like, that stuff was gorgeous, man. Watching Vision fight Vision, I mean, during that fight sequence, man, there's a whole bunch of phasing going on where they're phasing out of grips, phasing through each other to hold on to each other. Like, there was just really wonderful stuff. And I mean, just the build up to what it meant for the family, to see them all come together and work together. We got a real legit Incredibles moment when they're all kind of like ready to go. Like, as soon as you saw them stand there, I was like, oh man, it's just like the Incredibles. And who thought that Wanda and her family would be the thing tied or reflected in the Incredibles when we got the Fantastic Four coming at some point. And I don't know, I loved all of it, man. I thought it was such a cool way to tell a story. It was very original, and it told the perfect Wanda origin, man, and tied in Vision perfectly because he's so instrumental to everything that Wanda is at this point. And the way they handled him and White Vision and waking White Vision up That was so awesome. That's probably my biggest gripe with the episode is I don't know what happened to White Vision. How do you not show us what happened to White Vision? Like, once he gets his memories back, why wouldn't he go to Wanda? Or why wouldn't you just show where he went so we know what he's doing? Like, that's the thing that I think maybe I was like the most like, damn, like I can't believe they left that hanging out there. But as far as everything else went, I really, really dug it. And if you want to know how I dug it when I was first watching it, well, strap in. We got about 5-6 minutes of the old Seaman reacting to things from WandaVision, the series finale. So let's take it away, past Seaman.
Oh, she caught it! Oh, shit!
You're clearly in over your little redhead.
Oh! Let's go, Wanda! The Wicked Witch. That's amazing. But she gone. Oh, he's trying to crush her head! Where's Vision?
And I was told we were powerful.
Oh, there's Vision. He is very powerful. Also, how high up is that?
Peacefully.
Flourish.
Flourish. I love Jimmy so much.
You're Ralph Bohner? How is she? No, stand down!
Monica! Oh, look at those photon or spectrum powers. Oh, that one got by. Oh, this is awesome. Yes, Billy. No, he's... Darcy! Yes!
Have fun in prison.
Love her. What is that? She put a protection spell when she broke it? Oh, Wanda, you learned fast, girl.
But I don't need you to tell me.
Yes! She's Scarlet Witch, baby! She's taken. Oh, there it is! Yo! Yes! Oh, it's so pretty! Oh, that is awesome!
Oh, God. You don't know what you've done.
Oh, it's tangible! It's all tangible! Oh, it looks so cool! Oh, dude, she looks so badass.
Wanda, I know we can't stay like this. But before I go, I feel I must know. voice with no body. A body but not human, and now a memory made real. And that's what I might be next. We have said goodbye before, so it stands to reason.
We'll say hello again.
So long, darling.
It was sent by an old friend of your mother's.
Yes.
You're just
I told you, man. I like just rewatching myself watch the end of this episode is so emotional, and it is one of the most beautifully written goodbyes I've ever seen in TV or film. And it definitely impacted me. And when the show can bring you to those emotional places, that means the build was good. It means the execution on the delivery of the peak was excellent. Like, they hit the marks that they needed to hit in this show to have an impact on the viewer. And this show had a massive impact on me. I loved diving into it. I loved getting back into my comic book roots, diving into stories I haven't read in years, sharing that information with you, and hopefully, you know, everyone was able to have fun that way. Now, all that being said, we will definitely touch on the end credit sequences coming up. I will dive in specifically on the second one more, probably in a separate video, either later today or tomorrow. But there's stuff to dive into because there are definitely things set up on the tee for things that are coming up that I think we should all still be getting really, really excited about. And like, it's not like if you're disappointed with what happened and it didn't pan out the way you were hoping it would pan out or answer the questions that you hoped it would answer, that doesn't mean that this show isn't on the right path for what we need, man. It's doing exactly what Marvel needs to be doing, and the story is moving forward, and we are on a locomotive that I don't think is going to stop anytime soon. So with all of that said, all of my just general thoughts out there, let's break through this whole episode so I can get into the detailed things that kind of jumped out at me. And we start right where we left off, man. Agatha's got the kids in that grip, and Wanda is like, don't make me fight you. And Agatha is like, honestly, that's what I want. I want you to fight me because I want to absorb your power. Much like we saw last week, what she did to her coven and her mother, Agatha consumes other witches' powers and you know, their energy to make herself more powerful. And that's what she's trying to get Wanda to do. Fight me so I can take your magic. And once I start to take it a little bit, maybe, you know, Agatha will have enough power to drain Wanda like she did the other witches. And I tell you, man, like, when you saw it in the reactions, when she caught that second one and was just like, yeah, I eat this for lunch, baby. I was like, oh my goodness, dude. Like, Agatha is super powerful and could be really, really dangerous. And I love that, you know, like, I love that Agatha presented a real legitimate threat right out the gate, to the point where, like, after she caught just a piece of the energy that Wanda threw, you know, we've seen Wanda use her red energy before and it's never affected her physically. Once she consumed it, her, like, hand started to age, and you're like, uh-oh, like, Wanda better get it together. She is in some big trouble here. And then Agatha offers her a way out, right? She's like, look, you can see I'm more powerful than you right now, and you might have more power than me, but you don't know how to use it. This isn't about how much power you have, which she says at some point in the episode. She's like, it's how, it's the knowledge. This is what you know, what you've learned. So I'll give you this little quaint place. I'll fix your spell. And you can live here with your family and Vision forever. Just give me all your power. And that's one of my favorite moments in the entire episode, where you're like, is Wanda going to think about it so she can keep this reality? Or is she going to fight for this reality and then keep it herself? And as you're thinking that, Agatha gets smacked with an SUV that comes flying out of nowhere and then crashes with Agatha through the front of her house. And this, like, in a world where we've got witches now, this is like the most genius Easter egg nod, tip of the cap to another movie. Wanda comes over, and as she's looking under the car to see where Agatha disappeared to into the house, something that happens in real life, like if you've heard Dane Cook ever tell a story of seeing someone get hit by a car, you hear things like, a lot of times if people get hit hard enough, it will knock their shoes off. So this car hit Agatha hard enough and knocked her shoes off, leaving them right under the car, very much like the Wicked Witch of the West shoes from Wizard of Oz. I loved that. That was just, as soon as I giggled to myself, I was like, that's great. And then you're like, but wait, much like Wanda, like, where is Agatha? And we don't really have any time to play with that, because the next thing you know, White Vision comes down. And Wanda spins and sees him, and he says, Wanda, to her. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, now granted, they probably could have fed him the intel and he would know everything, but for a brief second, you're like, I wonder if his memories are actually in there somewhere, and like he has a connection, because it's like a nice moment, and Wanda is like, Vision, like, is that really you? Like, she knows she created one Vision, the actual body of Vision, that could be him, and he like gives her this gentle embrace, and you're like, aw, and then he brings the second hand up, and you hear the crunching sound, and you're like, oh, he is going to pop her head like a cherry. And I literally was just sitting there going, where is Vision? And sure enough, Vision comes in, knocks White Vision off Wanda. Wanda does the superhero landing as she comes down. Everybody's superhero landing in this show, which is always great. But after Vision knocks White Vision off, he immediately flies back to Wanda, and she apologizes. She's like, Vision, I'm sorry. I should have told you everything the minute I realized what I had done. And he's like, I understand why you did it, but like what you did, like, and she's like, I know, I'm gonna fix it. And Vision's like, can you? Like, are you really gonna fix it? Like, can you fix this? Is this something that you can fix? And it's one of those things that I love about Vision, because the way and they get into this too in the episode, the way he breaks things down, how analytical and, machine-like he is, with the way he can kind of put his emotions that, he has to the side and kind of just flesh out something. And just being direct with Wanda like that, it's like, I know that you want to, but can you? Like, because in order to fix this, and I think Vision knows this at this point, is she's going to have to let everybody go. Like, you're going to have to give Vision and your kids up to fix this. Otherwise, I don't think you can fix it. And I love getting that from Vision before we get what we get with Agatha a little bit later. And after that, Agatha reappears just out of the mist that didn't exist. She just pops floating up above. She's got like she was looking more green, but she's flying up in the sky. And at that point, Wanda and Vision kind of look at each other, and the White Vision's coming. Vision goes off to fight him. Wanda goes off to fight Agatha, and all of it is getting ready to take place in the sky. I love it, man. We got all these people flying around. Like, we haven't had a lot of that. Like, the way this looked as they were fighting, both Vision and Agatha and Wanda. Just, like, stuff that, like, I feel like we haven't seen in the MCU as far as, like, what you can do with flying characters. And you get, like, this big flying battle. Then we real quick jump to Monica. As Wanda takes off, you hear her, like, tapping on the window. She's like, Wanda, and Fietro's in the back going, she ain't gonna hear you, man. Just chill. Like, this is my chill pad. You know, she's like, what is this place? He's like, this is where I chill, man. Like, it's my bachelor pad. It's where I hang out. And she goes to, like, leave, and Fietro's still real fast. He gets right in front of her, and all he does is just go, bing, and flies. Like, Monica crashes and, like, looks kind of hurt, and then we jump right back outside to the air where the visions are fighting each other. And I love this. The writing on this show is so freaking good. You get up into the sky and the visions are fighting each other, and Vision goes to White Vision. Might we resolve this peacefully? And White Vision, just like we said last week, he is an empty husk who just has whatever his directive is, and that's what he's got to follow. And he's like, my objective states that I have to neutralize Wanda Maximoff, and you, the Vision, must be destroyed. And Vision just looks at him and goes, so a no then. Paul Bettany is so good. And then we get this really cool phasing fight, man. Like, as he says, okay, I guess that's a no, he phases through the White Vision, turns around and, like, goes to punch him, and, like, phases his arm through the White Vision's arm, and then, like, restabilizes, because they could just phase in and out of each other. Now all of a sudden you got a lock, and, like, they're throwing each other around. White Vision throws his fist through Vision's chest. Like, it's just really cool phasing fight that ends up with the two crashing down to the ground momentarily. But as they're kind of fighting up in the sky, we get, I said this in my non-spoiler review, everybody gets a payoff. And there wasn't a lot of time in this episode. That's the one other gripe I have, is Shackman said 6 hours. This show didn't even scratch the surface. Couldn't even get in sniffing distance of 6 hours. We needed like an extra hour of content if we were going to get there. And this was like under 50 minutes, right? So it did feel a little rushed at times, but there wasn't room to give everybody, a payoff per se. And yet they found ways to do it. When we come down from the sky, we're with Hayward. And I love this. He's tracking the two visions. You see, like, they're fighting in the sky, and then you go to that little board, and you have the purple dot and a white dot, and they're kind of, like, bouncing around on the screen that he's watching. And he goes, so can we reconfirm the mission objective? And this woman that is part of that S.W.O.R.D team, she goes, his system is overloaded, sir. We can't send him anything more. He goes, is he still under our control? And she goes, as far as I can tell, he is. So they are live sending stuff to the White Vision, but he's dealing with so much just fighting Vision right now, they can't send any transmissions through, but they believe they're still in control of them. And that just shows that Hayward was worried that they could lose control of him, right? Could Wanda do something to him? Could Vision do something to him? You don't really know what you're getting. We know that there's decaying vibranium on the Vision that Wanda created, but you don't know, how he's going to respond in a fight. So I like Hayward kind of doing all that, and while that's happening, Jimmy Woo gets brought in handcuffs, and, Hayward's just being a dick. Jimmy's telling him, you're not going to get away with this. And he's like, sure I am. Wanda stopped sending her show. She canceled it. So there's no transmissions showing that there are two visions. And when that White Vision walks out of that hex, people will just assume that's the Vision. And Jimmy's like, okay, but you're in trouble when the feds get here within the hour, because I already called them and whatever. And he sees a phone, he hears a phone vibrate, and nobody's paying attention. And Jimmy, just standing there, just cleverly moves himself to where he can take the phone, and then just kind of keeps talking to Hayward. And Hayward's like, you're full of it, man. You're bluffing. And Jimmy's like, am I? He's like, get him out of here. They throw him into a corner, and Jimmy immediately pops a little pin, picks his locks, gets his hands free, and then calls the FBI. It's like, hey, this is Agent Wu. I need y'all to get here, and preferably within an hour would be great, which lines up with the show, because when we get to the end, they show up right after everybody goes into the hex, which is right around that, just under an hour. They got there fast enough, just not fast enough to catch Hayward. But I love that Jimmy kind of got this moment to really just kind of throw it in Hayward's face, and then get out to call backup to come in and try to help with this stuff. And Randall Park has just been so good this whole season, and they gave him the things that were going to make you laugh, smile, enjoy in that moment, and I'm glad that we got that with Jimmy. But after Jimmy gets out and calls the feds, we're back to Wanda and Agatha, and they're downtown. Agatha is kind of missing after Wanda took off for her, so she's walking around downtown trying to find Agatha. And as she's looking, Agatha plays dirty and, materializes behind her and hits her with a big old whap of that purple-black magic that she's got, man. The colors in the show were popping today. But, kind of hits her, knocks her down, and basically, makes fun of her. I think this is the point where she says, it's not about the power, man. You don't know how to use your power. Just give it to me, and this can all be done. And what's cool is she ends up, on top of a building, and she actually brings the Darkhold out and opens the Darkhold. So my thought that, she needed Wanda to actually open or get certain things from the Darkhold, not a thing, but she's got it, and she opens it to the Wanda page and starts describing what the Scarlet Witch is. She's like, you were not born but forged. You have no coven, no need for incantations. And you hear Wanda, she's like, I'm not a witch. I don't know how to do spells. I've never done spells. And literally Agatha just said, you don't need to know incantations. This energy and this power just manifests and does things without you necessarily knowing that you're doing things. Then Agatha continues, her power exceeds that of the Sorcerer Supreme. The confirmation that Wanda is the strongest Avenger. If she's more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme, the only person that could outdo her, or people, would be probably Captain Marvel and Thor. And as we know, and as I've said, Wanda is like an Omega level. When she is the Scarlet Witch, she's untouchable. So Agatha just pinpointing that she's more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme. Huge hint to that. And then when we see what she can do, she can create reality. She is the most powerful Avenger, and I love that we get a confirmation of sorts. I guess you could argue that it's not a confirmation, because they haven't fought, but it's a pretty good confirmation that Wanda is going to be the most powerful thing we've ever seen in the MCU. We are just getting a taste of Wanda through this show. And like I said, I'm super excited for Liz Olsen because there is so much meat still on the bone for this character and where they could take it and how it could play into this Phase 4 potential multiverse story that they're telling, if that's what the Phase 4 is going to focus on. We'll obviously have a bigger and better idea of what else we could be focusing on after we get through the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But, so Agatha, tells her she's more powerful than Sorcerer Supreme, and her destiny is to destroy the world. And Wanda takes offense to that. She's like, I am not what you say I am. And, dude, Catherine Hahn, so good, man. She's just, eating it. She was like, I was waiting for you to say that. And she's like, yeah, you're not what I say? All right. And she wakes up Dottie. And Wanda sees her kind of walking forward. She goes, Dottie. And she's like, and this whole sequence, man, just gets under your skin. But she goes, my name is Sarah. I have a daughter who's 8. Maybe she could be friends with the boys if you like that storyline, or she could be the bully. Whatever you want. I don't care if you just let her out of her room, or if I could just hold her, please. And you hear Dottie say this, and now your confirmation on what happened to all the kids. Much like Fietro said to Wanda, she's just locked them down in their rooms and basically put them to sleep. And while Wanda is kind of struggling, with what's going on, she's like, this is you. You're making her say that. And she's like, oh, really? And, Agatha does her little thing and wakes up everybody that's downtown. And we see, Norm, we see Herb, and they all start coming. They're like, I used to want to try to fight you. Now I don't know. Is this even real? What is happening right now? And you hear confusion as more people come forward. And they're just, the claustrophobic feel and effect of this sequence was so well done. It was just beautiful because you felt exactly what was going to happen. Everybody is bearing down on Wanda. You're feeling trapped. Wanda's got to be feeling trapped. And she's got to be feeling all of the guilt that she's actually been hurting people. And as people come forward, they're telling you, that they're hurting and that they're trapped. And Wanda's like, no, I'm helping. Everybody's fine. Everyone's gonna be fine. This was better for you guys. And they're like, when you do let us sleep, we live your nightmares. You know what I mean? We are living your pain and we feel your grief every day, and it's just consuming Wanda. And as that guilt is consuming her, this group is just descending on her, and Agatha is just up there this is exactly what I want. She's provoking Wanda. She wants Wanda to explode so she can get access to her power. And I love the way that they set that up and executed that here. Then we jump back to Monica chilling in Fietro's man cave. And while they're sitting there and, Fietro's just kind of riffing, being a total dude, Monica starts going through his mail. And we see his name. And we find out that the Fietro is indeed Ralph. However, Ralph is just a normal, regular old dude who lived in this house when Agatha showed up, and she took over, the place. Now, he seems like he's young and probably doesn't own the house, so I don't know what happened to his family, what Agatha did with them, but Ralph, who she's been referring to as her husband, is indeed Fietro, and his full name is Ralph Bohner. Like, and Monica even says, she's like, "You're Ralph Bohner?" Like, she says it with disappointment. Like, you mean that we went through all this and you're just Ralph Bohner? Like, you're a punchline, basically, to a joke. And yes, if you were gonna get, kind of snippy with Feige, that was probably the biggest slap in our face, was stunt casting Evan Peters, who played Pietro in the Fox movies, to play a fake Pietro here. But the genius of it is, like, you have Monica deliver the line the way a fan would be like, "You're Ralph Bohner, and they made your last name," and, like, he even chuckles and goes, "Bohner." Like, you made the whole thing just a joke. And, while, there's not a ton of importance to any of that, like, I like the way that was delivered to us, where it's like, okay, you're letting us down with, like, the fact that this is all a joke, but, like, even the character inside is like, that's ridiculous. Like, we've been watching this show. That's all this was. But what's cool is once she realizes that he's a regular guy, she's like, how is Agatha controlling him? And we get to see what Monica's powers really are. Remember, last time we saw her, that purple energy that she saw in the basement was in her eyes. That's not Agatha having a hold on her the way Agatha had a hold on Wanda. That's Monica using her power to kind of sync up with that energy level so that she can detect it. Like, she can see all variations of light and energy. So when she's reading that, that's what she's doing. She's experiencing it so she can see it. So when she pins Fietro to the ground, her eyes turn purple, and all of a sudden the necklace starts glowing. And she's like, this is the magical hold. She rips it off, and he becomes Ralph Bohner immediately. He's like, is this a dream? Is this real? Help me, save me. Like, scared just like everybody else. He was one other person, much like Dottie, who ended up being no one but just a person in the town. But I did think it was kind of funny that he ended up being Ralph. I got a really, really good kick out of that. Then we jump back to the Visions, and they're fighting up in the sky, and we are inside the house. Everybody was outside, and Wanda told the boys to go in. They were going, and when Visions was like, "Where's the boys?" She's like, "They're in the house." He's like, "Okay, good." So they see the Visions kind of fly away and go up, and I think Tommy goes, "Can you see them anymore?" And Billy's like, "No," or maybe Billy says, "Can you see one of them?" And then Billy immediately starts going, and he gets flashes of what's happening to Wanda. We see Wanda, like, scream, and energy bursts out of her, and you're like, oh, this is exactly what Agatha was trying to do. As soon as they see Wanda's in trouble, they take off, and then we jump back to the Westview downtown, as Westview kind of just engulfs Wanda, and she has to just let, like, all of the guilt that she's feeling, she just lets out in a burst, and immediately almost kills everybody downtown. Like, that burst didn't expand the hex or anything like that. It, like, choked every single person that was there, and she is, like, processing, like, you can tell, like, the emotions that she's feeling, she's actually going through those before she's even realizing what's happening. And as she kind of comes out of that burst and she sees what's happening, she's like, no, stop, and, like, takes the power and takes it all away. And it's one of those things where it's like, she can't control her powers entirely yet. Like Agatha's been saying, you're not trained. You don't know how to use this power, but that power can manifest itself whenever it wants. And if it's linked to her emotions, it's just doing things that she's not even aware of, much like the whole Westview anomaly was something that she created without knowingly creating it, which is kind of crazy and just tells you the level of magic. And if she gets expertise and understands how to wield that magic, she's going to be one of the most powerful, scary individuals in the MCU. And depending on what side she's playing in, you might be really, really scared of Wanda coming up. And then right after she releases everybody, we see Mrs. Hart. And she's like, if you're not going to let us go, just kill us, please. And you're like, you can only imagine how that's hitting Wanda. And as that's happening, Wanda again bursts out with the energy, and this time she attacks the hex, and she starts to break down. It looks kind of like the corners are separating, and she just tells everybody that's in downtown, go, run now, leave, like get out of here. I can hold this for this long, but like you gotta go. And then we jump back to Hayward and Co., and they see these openings line up, and Hayward's like, let's roll, we're getting in there, and S.W.O.R.D comes barreling into the hex as everyone from Westview is trying to run out of it. And the other thing, too, that I love about a lot of the sequences that we've gotten at this point inside the hex is they're showing the hex above us. So you can really see how much of, like, Westview and the surrounding area, like, this thing was humongous. And it's, like, the real first time we see a full concept of that scale, which I really, really dug. So the hex starts to break down, and then we come in and we see Vision flying in, and he's kind of got pieces starting to melt. Or actually, I'm sorry, when Wanda's kind of breaking the hex apart, he's fighting the White Vision, and they both go with the beams, man. He's got the Mind Stone beam, and White Vision's just got whatever arc reactor beam he's creating. It definitely seems like Stark technology. But the beams are going, and all of a sudden you see the white beam overpowering Vision, because as Wanda is breaking the hex a little bit, her hold on the things that she's created is starting to fritz. We see everything flashing in the town, like through the different cycles and ages that we've seen, and Vision literally starts to break apart and falls, and he crashes all the way down to the ground, and then tries to make his way toward Wanda, but he is literally almost being dusted, but like in a different way, where instead of it turning to dust, it's like pieces, like colored pieces of him are just ripping off. And then we hear the boys coming running in, and the same thing is happening to them. And like they're all down on the ground, like reaching out, like giving us these very, very strong Infinity War vibes of like what happened to everybody as they got dusted. And that's happening to the kids. And Agatha explains to her, like, this isn't Mephisto. The kids aren't tied to Mephisto, but they are tied directly to what Wanda created. She's like, what you've done is you've tied your family to this place, and the hex and them cannot live without each other. You have one, you can't have the other. And that basically means, like, if you take this hex down, they go away. And if Wanda is going to correct things the way that, she said she could try to fix them to Vision, that's what's going to have to happen. She's going to have to let go of everything. And when you start to see that formulating in the story, you're like, this is just literally a story about Wanda going through the different phases of grief, and actually for the first time ever processing all the grief that she's accumulated in her life. And that is beautiful when you're looking at this as a Wanda-centric story, and that's why I love the finale, why I love the show so much, because it does this stuff specifically to the Wanda portion of the story so freaking well. So yeah, it's not Mephisto. It really is all Wanda, and that's the way she created them. They are tied to the hex. And as that's going on, Agatha ends up draining a real big chunk of power from Wanda, and like both her arms now are like aging and kind of blackening and turning kind of like much like the we saw the witches last week. So she has to stop. She releases the hex. Vision and the boys reform, so they're all good. And as Wanda is kind of having that chunk taken by Agatha, you start to see everybody surrounding the group, right? Like once the boys come back and Vision comes back, they all kind of meet in the middle, and we see Agatha up on one side. We got White Vision coming in from the other side, and we got S.W.O.R.D coming in from the other two sides, and the entire family is now completely surrounded, and you get this really awesome moment where they kind of all do one of these, and it's literally like the pose that the Incredibles do in the first movie when all four of them are finally together and they kind of like stand getting ready for whatever's coming at them. And Wanda and Vision kind of understand, like, I'm gonna take Agatha, you take White Vision, and eventually the boys will take on S.W.O.R.D. That's gonna be their mission. So I love that they get in on the action, and I think at one point Vision even says, like, boys, we did not train you for this. Me and your mother did not train you. And Wanda's like, but you were born for this. And we get to see them use their powers like in a fight. But before we get there, Vision shoots right after the White Vision. They go crashing into the library. And this is one of my favorite sequences, and it's two pieces because we'll go back outside. But this first piece, like, you can see what they're setting up, and again, genius when you're talking about writing for the character, the Vision. So they get inside, and Vision asks White Vision, why he's doing what he's doing, and White Vision is like, "It's my directive," which just confirms to Vision for a second time, like, you're programmed, and if you're programmed, like I was, you're going to function like a machine. You're going to look for the logical and the analytical solutions to everything. You're going to break it down. And once he confirms that by asking him, like, why are you doing this, man? Like, why are you doing it? It's like, because I have to. That's my directive. He knows that he'll be able to reason with him. Because if he presents something that makes sense and can kind of almost like, it's one of those, like when you watch a cartoon or different shows where you have someone who's super powerful, who's got like a mind control of some kind, you usually break through on them by giving them a puzzle or something that doesn't work logically. So Vision can convince him that he doesn't sync up with what the directive is. That's your way out, and that's genius for the character. But again, White Vision is just like, no, man, like, I'm going for you. He comes for him, and you see Vision kind of phases through the floor as the beam follows him. He comes up and under, and then he puts White Vision in a headlock, and he ends up, he goes to him, but I'm not the true Vision. I'm only a conditional Vision. And now, like I said, you're seeing that he is getting into the White Vision's head to make him break this down so he doesn't kill anybody. Kind of takes this logical type theory, and as White Vision is kind of thinking through it, he goes, "I request elaboration." And you're like, yes, attaboy, Vision. Like, you've got White Vision right where you need him. And when we go back in, that is one of my favorite parts of the entire episode. But back outside, Agatha is getting ready to kill a couple military men. She lifts them all up into the air and kind of like is looking like she's going to crush them and like drop them. And as they start falling from probably like 6-7 stories up, Wanda catches all of them and like eases them to the ground, and to kind of save all of them. And that's when she's like, "Boys, you're gonna handle the S.W.O.R.D agents." And I love that you get to see Tommy and Billy get involved. And Billy, has got the mind powers and the magical powers. Tommy's got the speed, and I love you see Tommy, very Quicksilver oriented, runs through and messes with all the cops, like takes one of their hats, takes some of their sunglasses, messes around with them, and I'm pretty sure Billy's making some kind of connection to them mentally so that they don't shoot anybody. And as they kind of finish, right, and all like all the soldiers seem to be disarmed to a degree. Tommy's got all the gear on, and he looks at Billy and like, "All right, man." And then frickin' Hayward gets out of his car and literally comes gun loaded and unloads an entire clip at 2 10-year-old children. Like, if you didn't think this guy was a dirtbag before, this episode he does everything he can to confirm that he is a massive dirtbag. Not necessarily tied to anything like Hydra or AIM, like I was hoping or thinking with all the hexagons. The hexagons really were just to get to the hex, and they're a good shape, visually. I think that was what that was all about. And indeed, it doesn't seem like he's an evil person. He just seemed like a person that was in a position of power that was trying to take advantage of it to get more power and get what he wanted. He's just a bad dude, but it doesn't seem like he's directly tied to anybody. But unloads a whole clip on 2 kids. And as he's doing that, you hear Monica coming. And she's like, "No!" And she jumps in front, and you see the bullets start to go through her. And it's kind of like a phasing technique to a degree, but it's totally different. It looks more light-oriented, and knowing that her powers are light-oriented, I just like the visual of, like, it's not a Vision phase, but she's basically catching and releasing the bullets so that when they come out the back of her, they're all just dropping to the ground. They're not reaching the boys. And as she's doing that, her eyes light up like this bright gold, really, really gorgeous, like, shot. A lot of shots on the eyes with her and Wanda both this episode and throughout the series. But gorgeous shot there. And then one bullet, Hayward aims high and comes behind her, and you see her, like, look as it passes, and it doesn't reach the boys. Good old Billy goes, "I catch it." And they have this really, really wonderful back and forth where Monica goes, "Nice tricks," and Billy goes, "I like yours too." I tell you, over the course of the episodes they've been in, the boys have grown on me. When they first aged up, I was like, well, they're definitely better than the younger version of actors that they had for the kids. but I wasn't completely sold. And I was more sold on Tommy than Billy. Billy has totally won me over between last episode and what he does here, and same with Tommy. Like, I really do like both of these kids, and I hope, and we'll see when we get there, that Wanda can find them and bring them back, because I would like to see these two kids do more and see them kind of grow up, where it's like those two actors becoming, Speed and Wiccan at some point in the MCU whenever we get there. But yeah, so Hayward's just the biggest dick ever, and when he realizes he's got no bullets left because he unloaded the whole clip, he jumps into his car and he backs it up, and you're like, oh, he's getting out of Dodge, and then he throws it back into drive, and you're like, oh my god, he's going to try to run down Monica and the kids. And right as he's about to take off, you hear a weird honking noise, and you're like, I told you, payoffs for everybody this episode. And you saw it in my reaction. I was like, Darcy! And she comes full speed with that funnel cake truck and smashes it into this sword-like armored vehicle. And what's really cool is when Wanda does start to shrink the hex later on and everything reverts back, you're like, how did this junky old van have that kind of impact on that car that she hits? And you got to remember, like, when Monica went in, she came out, like, her pants became bulletproof because Wanda changed the materials to be something different, but they were still at their core the same thing. Well, that funnel cake truck is one of them big honking trucks, and we see it like pinned to the one later, and that's why the force is there, because that truck is carrying all of the force of the real truck that it actually is in reality. So when it hits Hayward, it like knocks it and it pins him. And we only got so much time in this episode, so it's like, that happened, he's pinned, we can leave him and keep moving on. And of course they give Darcy the one-liner of, like, she kind of waves to him, she's like, have fun in prison, and you're like, oh, that was so satisfying. And it was like a wonderful way to get Darcy back in real quick and give her a nice W. But then we jump back to the library sequence. And like I said, this is really, really cool. Vision brings up this thought experiment of the ship Theseus in the field of identity metaphysics. So he asks White Vision, like, you're familiar with this? And White Vision's like, obviously, like, I'm a freaking computer. I know what you're talking about. And basically, the whole debate is, you have this ship, and the ship is in this museum, and it's there for decades and decades and decades, and some of the boards get rotted and deteriorate, so they replace them. And if the boat continues to do that all the way through, and you replace all of it, is it still the ship Theseus? But there's a second angle to that. If you just remove the rot and replace the rot, you don't replace the whole plank, but you just replace the rot, is that the ship Theseus? And what White Vision ends up saying is, and it's one of those things, like, when you're like seeing what they're setting up, you're like, oh my gosh, they're setting up a parallel, like Vision setting up a parallel between him and White Vision to get White Vision to see what he sees so that he stops what he's doing. White Vision says the answer is neither is the true ship. Both are the true ship. And I was just like, you're both the true Vision to a degree. That's your soul. That's your physical body. And I was like, come on, we got to merge you together. That's not what we get. But what we get is pretty cool and still kind of comic accurate. And it confirms one of the things that I was thinking, right? When we thought that Wanda had raised Vision and the Vision was actually the one that was inside of Westview, I was like, as he was starting to realize more things, I had kind of postured like, he's a robot, all of those memories, they didn't rip out with the Mind Stone. They're in his data somewhere encoded in him. They just have to kind of come out. And I was thinking maybe as he was gaining more realization of what was happening, it was because he was starting to gain things back. Once we realized that it wasn't the physical body of Vision, you can kind of throw that out. But Vision uses it here, and he goes, what if, like, the rot is the thing. Like, if you remove the rot, that's how you can kind of get to the Theseus. Like, what if the rot, the memories, is the rot? Like, to you, now he's talking directly to the Vision. Like, your rot is the memories. So they wiped that away, but it's still there. You know what I mean? If you can find it. And, White Vision kind of puts together, it makes me a more efficient operative if that stuff's hidden. And Vision's like, yeah, and he goes to kind of touch him, and White Vision is like, no, he's like, look, and he does the wake up thing. You see, like, the Mind Stone yellow kind of get in there, and sure enough, all that data, like Vision says to him, he's like, you have the memories. They're in there. It's in your. You just have to find them. And he brings them out, and you start seeing these flashes of all these memories of the Vision from all the movies. And it was one of these, like, I couldn't tell if, like, the Vision soul that Wanda created was also now getting those memories back as White Vision was getting them. But as White Vision gets them all, his weird tech blue eyes disappear and become like real looking eyes again, much like Vision. And he just kind of sits there and goes like, I am the Vision, and just takes off through the sunroof. And as I said, that's the last time we see White Vision. That was my biggest gripe. Like, you give him back all his memories, he knows everything now, he just takes off and disappears. Like, where did he go? Like, once he has those memories back, you'd think he'd want to go find Wanda. So that was kind of a little wonky. But how he wakes up to start becoming the Vision again, really, really well done. And like I said, there's kind of elements to that comic accuracy where they kind of retconned after the White Vision was not Vision and found a way for him to get his memories back so that he could become Vision. They just did that a lot faster than they did in the comics so that we don't have to lose Paul Bettany. And maybe White Vision just took off to try to process all this, right? Like, you have no memories and now you have all the memories. It's probably a lot to take in. So maybe he's at the top of Mount Wundagore. He's just trying to process everything. And down at the bottom of Mount Wundagore is where that little like cabin that Wanda's got going on. So maybe they will run into each other. But maybe that's where he went. And then our Vision heads out to the boys and kind of like embraces them as Wanda and Agatha gear up for a big old battle. So Agatha now, she's up on like the top of this roof, and Wanda, she doesn't know where she is. She's kind of watching the Vision stuff. Wanda gets up behind her and hits her like this with the freaking mind trick stuff. And like she did to the Avengers, we get teleported to the Salem witch trials where the Coven had, like, Agatha had just killed the Coven. And I love how Kathryn Hahn and Agatha approach everything. Like, we will sell whatever we gotta sell if it works for us to get what we need. So like when she gets there and she's like, immediately Agatha's just like, no, like scared that we're here. And Wanda's like, yeah, I can do things too. And she's like, that's the difference, Agatha, between you and me. You did this on purpose to your Coven and your mother. What I did was not on purpose. It was spontaneous. Now, you could obviously argue that once you became aware, you didn't stop doing what you were doing, so it's still kind of not good, but very clearly painting that picture of, like, Wanda right now is not a bad person. Like, she is somewhat caught up in circumstance. And she points that out to Agatha, and you're like, oh, Wanda's got the powers, she starts to rate, like, you're getting, like, witch zombies, man. They're, like, all starting to stand up, and you're like, ooh, where is this going? This is going to be interesting. And all of a sudden, like, as they're kind of standing, Agatha's fear, and she's like, no. You think you can outdo me, really? And the entire Coven starts to turn, and they're like, Wanda, you're the Scarlet Witch. And now they're turning on Wanda, and you're like, damn, dude, Agatha's gotten out for everything. And as all that's happening, they kind of bring her to the stake, and they lock her down. And, Agatha's just like, give me your power. You give it to me, we'll fix everything, it'll be fine, it'll be a lot easier for you, I promise, if you just give me your power. And all of a sudden, that's the place where she's like, it's not so much the power that's your problem. You don't have the knowledge of how to use this. And then all of a sudden, it was like Agatha's still poking the bear, and Wanda is starting to figure things out, and the red crown, much like the blue energy crown formed on her mom, forms on Wanda, and like just, again, confirming that Scarlet Witch stuff to our people. And she kind of does a burst, knocks all of the witches away, and then she full on runs, grabs Agatha, and you get one of these cool, like, they're in the middle of a dark wood, and as Wanda hits her, they're now above like a store in Westview during the day, crashing to the ground. I love that seamless transition. And then the two of them take off to have this huge battle up in the air. And this was, some might say some of the CGI was a little wonky. Look, it's still a television show. I know that they're operating like a movie and they're pouring way more money into it than you would a movie, but I don't think it's quite as much money as a movie. So like some of it, but it looked so cool. Like I didn't even care if some of it didn't look 100% real. Like you were like, that's CG. It just looked dope, and it set a really perfect ambiance for this final battle. And the entire sequence, man, I mean, like, the whole hex is lit up red, so everything in the sky is red. Wanda's got her red magic powers. You got Agatha wielding that purple and black, and then you got these really dark clouds mixing and swirling in there while they're all moving. And it could have been a really muddled mess, and I just thought I was, like, just glued, like, this is a wonderful build to a finale. And you just see Wanda start to unload on Agatha. And Agatha's like, give me all your power. And Wanda's just throwing red ball after red ball. And some of them are hitting Agatha and some of them aren't hitting Agatha. But with every one that hits Agatha and she absorbs, you see Wanda starting to decay and shrivel. And eventually gets to a point where I guess Agatha's obtained enough power where she just latches on and sucks everything Wanda's got out, and Wanda is just kind of left as like basically a corpse floating in the sky. And you're like, it kind of reminded me of like when like Superman gets exposed to like nuclear radiation before the sun heals him. Like she is like much like you saw the witches, like everything's been drained out of her. And Agatha, you can see, like, is growing with the power, and she's like, yes. As she is absorbing all of this power, she like mentions, like, just to throw it in Wanda's face. Like, Agatha is so bad. She's like, oh yeah, and that deal that I said I would make with you, complete and utter nonsense. Once you cast a spell, you can't change it. Like, the spell is set. You cannot like, you might be able to, like, if a spell has an ending, right? Like, say you possess somebody, you can end it. But when you cast a spell this big, you can't fix something if you mess it up. Like, that is what is cast. And you're like, that means that she's not going to give Wanda what she wants. And right as she says that, because she's got all the power, she goes for the kill. She's like, whoa! Hoo-wah! You're like, what did Wanda do? And all of a sudden, some of the clouds start moving, and you're seeing these, like, way brighter red areas. And sure enough, like, you sit and you saw it in my reaction. I was like, what are the freaking runes? Those energy shots that she was throwing at that missed Agatha must have been hitting the walls. Was her casting a protection spell and putting those runes up. And I love, like, Agatha's been poking her this whole episode and talking about how she doesn't have the knowledge. And, as Agatha realized, she's like, runes? She's like, yeah. I learned that, like, when those are cast in a specific space, only the witch that casts them can perform magic. So while she's losing her energy to Agatha, she's casting a spell that won't allow Agatha to use any magic at all inside of the hex. Absolute freaking genius, man. And, like, Wanda even acknowledges, like, thanks for the lesson. And you were like, oh, and that ties into, like, Agatha being a mentor to Wanda. Like, even though she's bad and wasn't directly being a mentor to Wanda, like, kind of taught Wanda some stuff. It was so cool and such an awesome way to trap and stop Agatha. Because, in all honesty, to that point, Agatha having the knowledge of how to use everything was a massive advantage for her. Once Wanda figured out one thing, traps Agatha, and then is like, I'll take that back, thanks. She's like, I don't need you to tell me who I am. And you're just like, yes! And she gets, like, this big, and all of the energy just starts funneling into her, and, like, just building and building. And, like, you can see, like, Wanda's in there in the street clothes that she's been in, and all of a sudden she kind of gets shadowy, and you pop back, and the hair changes, and you see the trench coat flapping, and you're like, she's turning into right in front of our faces, man. And it was literally, like, the most gorgeous thing like I said, I'm such a big Liz Olsen fan, and, like, watching her play, Wanda, and this whole series leading up, and, like, diving back into some of the comics, like, my love for Scarlet Witch is at an all-time high, and getting to see her born the way that she's born here was just one of the most gorgeous things that I've watched in the MCU. As Wanda absorbs everything, she changes, and then you see the helmet is there, like, in the energy, and it solidifies. And as it solidifies, in the middle is, like, an N-type looking symbol that, like, sort of reminisces like to the logo, like the shape of the M without the wings in the logo for the House of M, but also kind of looks like Magneto's helmet. Like, again, one of these things where if we would have seen that like an episode or two ago, we would have been like, oh, Magneto's coming. Reality, it's just a really nice little Easter egg nod to like Wanda comes from a comic background where Magneto was her dad. So to have like an element that kind of calls to, and he is the one who's in power in House of M. So to have something that kind of calls to that in the shape and form of the crown, if that's not what they were doing, it certainly looked like it. You know, Marvel doesn't do anything on accident, and it was just like, I saw that, I was like, that's so good. Like, it was just the perfect birth for a hero, maybe the most perfect one that we've seen in the MCU, at least for me. Like, it was just magnificent. And Agatha asks, after, you know, she's absorbed all the power and she's become the Scarlet Witch, everything ends and just kind of comes down. Agatha's got no powers left, and she like looks at her and she's like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna banish me somewhere? You know, lock me up somewhere? And Wanda goes, lock you up somewhere? No. I'm just gonna give you what you wanted when you came into my world. You wanted to be the nosy neighbor, right? That's what we're gonna give you. And Agatha immediately is like, no. And Wanda's like, yeah, you're trapped here forever. And she's like, Agatha pleads one last time. She's like, but you do not understand what you've unleashed. Like, you're gonna need me. Wanda's like, all right, that could be fair. And if I do, I know exactly where you'll be. I was like, one, again, more genius because it sets up a possibility for Agatha to be somebody that Wanda goes to learn things, kind of like a mentor. And then she turns her into Agnes. And for the first time, like, it's one of these things where it's felt like Agnes has kind of been scared at times. And we realized when we got that Agatha all along bit that she was acting. Well, now you've got that look in her face that looks kind of similar to the other residents of Westview. And this time, it's not acting. Like, you can see her doing the, okay, honey pie, like, whatever you say. And she's doing, like, the Agnes thing. But under the surface of the Agnes thing, you can tell that Agatha is, like, in pain and just so upset and just devastated that this was her end. And huge credit to Catherine Hahn. She has been brilliant this whole series, and right down to her last moments, man. Like, she was knocking it out of the ballpark. And as that kind of wraps up, you know, Vision and the boys all come together, and you have this nice little like reunion, and you know, Vision, you know, the kids are like, Mom, like, we did it, yeah, like, everybody's okay. And Vision's like, you know, Wanda, and I know that, like, that you're gonna fix this and you'll do the right thing, just not the right thing for us. And it's one of these, like, Vision knows, like, the end of this is Wanda letting everything go, you know, reaching the end of her grief, and moving past and letting it go. And he knows this is what's got to happen, and he understands it. He doesn't have to say it to the kids or clue them in, but he's telling Wanda, like, I understand what we have to do, so let's go do it, and do it in the most peaceful way possible. And he just simply says, should we go home? And they're like, yeah. And you see them going home, and as they get home, both Wanda and Vision revert to their normal clothes as they go through the door. And they go upstairs, and they tuck the kids in, and you just get this really beautiful moment of them saying goodnight to the boys, but in reality, they're both saying goodbye to the boys. And, you know, Vision tells them, like, I want you to know, like, your mom and I are so proud of you guys, like, for what they did, but in reality, just like, I couldn't be a prouder, I'm going to lose it, I couldn't be a prouder parent for just being the kids that they got to be for the time that Wanda and Vision have them. And it's one of those things where, like, as they're kind of doing it and they swap and say goodnight to the other one, Vision gets up and, like, just speeds out the door. And it was the thing that, like, that was the flip the waterworks to start, was he goes, as he gets up, he just goes, goodnight, chaps. But the way he says it, there's, like, a crack in his voice. Like, he's trying to hold back the emotion of what is about to happen so that they don't know. And you can see the hex is shrinking, you know, down in on them. And then Wanda, like, if that doesn't give you that emotional gut punch right away, Wanda is leaving and she turns and she's like, thank you, boys, she's like, thanks for choosing me to be your mom. Like, the brilliance, like just the beauty of the writing at the end. Like I said, this was one of the most beautiful goodbyes that I've ever seen on a screen, and it's characters that I really, really care about. And like I said to you, I cried when I saw it. I cried when I saw it the second time, and then I cried just hearing it and seeing me react to it. Now just talking about it, like it's one of the most perfect things that they do is how they wrap the whole show up. And you get Wanda and Vision, they go downstairs, and Wanda's turning off all the lights, and Vision comes in from behind her and turns one back on, and he goes, I read somewhere it's bad luck to say goodbye with the lights off. And Wanda just kind of smiles and looks at him. It's like this. It's just so Wanda and Vision being Wanda and Vision. She's like, no, you didn't. He's like, you're right, I didn't. He's like, I just wanted to see you, like, unobstructed, and there you are. Like, you're right there. And he goes, he's like, I know that we don't get to stay and that we have to go, but I have to ask, what am I? And Wanda responds, I had to write all of it down because it was so beautiful. She goes, you are Vision. And much like I had said, to create him, she was going to have to give a piece of herself. And she confirms it right here, man. She's like, you are Vision. You are the piece of the Mind Stone that lives in me. So she's telling him, when this is all over, you reside here. You don't disappear and go away forever. Oh, man, it's so good. So yeah, it lives in me. She's like, you are a body of wires and blood and bone that I created. You are my sadness and my hope, but mostly you're my love. And you want to talk about just the most beautiful sentiment somebody could say to somebody, and the fact that you legitimately created them from all of those things. Oh, dude, it was just crushing. And then they have this wonderful kiss, and it just emanates and radiates every single time we've seen them in that scenario. The first time they kissed, when they were on the run, when they're saying goodbye before Wanda kills him the first time in Infinity War. It's a lot of mirror images throughout the whole show. And it was beautiful and it was emotional. And as they back away, a legit tear rolls out of Vision's face, and he's not, Vision's not supposed to be real. He's a human, yes, or he's a robot, and yes, he has eyes because he's an actor. Although they certainly were able to make him look quite robotic, but that was kind of the clue to the soul, right? The eyes are the pathway to the soul. But we've never seen him actually emote physically, and you see this tear, and Wanda and him kind of catch it together, and he goes, I've been a voice with no body, a body but not human, and now a memory made real. Who knows what I might be next? And that's him, one of those, he is not telling her directly that, he knows he'll be back because the White Vision has all the memories again. But, I'm not, that's a clue to us. Vision's not going anywhere. White Vision will come back into the fold, probably find Wanda, have some kind of exchange. Maybe he's the key to getting out of the multiverse of madness and stopping Wanda if she is indeed, a villain or under a villain's influence. But just, who knows what I'll be next. Just because he knows that there is a version of him still out there. And, we've said goodbye before, so it stands to reason. And he kind of gets choked up, and Wanda finishes that we'll say hello again. And we know that that's true. That we will see them get back together again. It's just this beautiful goodbye. And as they're standing there, as she says that, the hex kind of shrinks in, and the house starts to re-deteriorate and, go back to being the empty lot. And we start to see Vision, light up yellow and start to disappear. And his whole body disappears except for his face. And the last thing that's there is his face. And he just goes, he just goes, so long, darling. Oh man, it's one of, just pure brilliance and, beauty and just really, really, really good writing. It's one of the most emotionally thoughtful and impacting goodbyes, like I said, that I've seen on screen. It was just hard for me to read through that. And as everything disappears, we end up with Wanda standing in the exact place she was standing when it all started. Like when she got there and let her grief out, she ends in that space, having processed and gone through all of that grief through the show. And that's what it is. The show is her processing her grief all the way to a conclusion that now allows her to be the best version of herself. And anytime you have to process grief and get through, that grief turns you into something that you are not. And when you get to the other side of it, it's like Vision said, grief is love persevering. And when you get through the other side of that grief, you usually are a better person than when you started. And that's exactly what's happened to Wanda. She is the ultimate version of herself now. She is the Scarlet Witch. Question is, what does that mean? But before we get there, she throws her hood on, heads out of town, and as she's walking, all the townsfolk are looking at her like she is the evilest thing in the world. And then she sees Monica, and they have this really nice back and forth where Monica just looks at her and goes, they'll never know what you sacrificed for them. And Wanda just goes, doesn't matter. Even if they knew, it wouldn't change how they view me. Like what I did to them. You can't take that away. And, Monica is being super understanding. And Wanda's like, right? Like, and Monica just simply goes, given your power and the opportunity, I would bring my mom back right now. I know I would. So, no, I can't blame you or be mad at you. Wanda's like, you're not mad at me? And she's like, I would have done the same thing. And Wanda just kind of looks at it, and they both kind of get it. And you start to hear the sirens as the FBI comes in with Jimmy. And, Wanda's like, goodbye, Monica. And, Monica's like, goodbye, Wanda. And she takes off. And as she takes off, she changes her clothes back into the Scarlet Witch clothes, and she's got the cape and hood on. And as she's flying, it was just a beautiful shot of like the hood floating through the sky as she's zooming, and then she kind of lands wherever she's going. And you just like it was just the hood element was such a cool look as she kind of looks back at Westview and takes off. And that's the end of the episode. And this series, potentially. Feige has said he hasn't ruled out a season 2. Like I said, depending on where we end up by the time we get to the end of Doctor Strange, you could have another world where Wanda and, the White Vision have a story, and you can have another WandaVision story and bring it back. And I'd like to see that, because I would love to spend more time with her as the Scarlet Witch and more time with the White Vision figuring out where you go from here and how that kind of works out. So that would be interesting to see, but we got to get through, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, Spider-Man, No Way Home, and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness before we can even think about a season 2 for this. And then, of course, there were end credit sequences, and we will dive in deeper on these separately because we've been talking for a long time. But the first post-credit, you see Hayward, being escorted out, and, Monica sees Jimmy, and she's like, Jimmy's directing everybody. He's like, I need you over there. You need to start setting up, medical tents over there or whatever. Monica's just like, Jimmy, like, power looks good on you, man. Like, being in charge, that looks good on Jimmy Woo. He's like, thanks, and they kind of just have a little back and forth. I think he asks, like, where's Darcy? And she's like, Monica's like, she said something about like debriefing is for the week or something like that. She's like, but she did leave us a gift. And you see Hayward being pulled out of the car, put in cuffs, taken away, and you're just like, yes, he's getting what he deserves. And then this other agent comes over, this woman comes up to Monica, and she's like, they're asking for you in the theater. So Monica's like, okay. They go in the theater, and there's nobody in the theater, and you're like, uh-oh, what does this mean? Monica is like realizing there's nobody in the theater, and it's like something is up. And this woman goes, I was sent by a friend of your mother's. And then she transforms into a Skrull. And for a minute I was like, oh, is that the little girl that like hung out, like Talos's daughter? I don't think it is, because there was no recognition between the two of them, like they had known each other from the past. She's just a Skrull who is disguised as a human, which of course is hinting to the setup of what Secret Invasion is. And I think this post-credit, for the most part, just confirms that Monica will probably be in that show, because when she's like, a friend of your mother's, he heard you'd been grounded. And the minute you heard he, you're like, okay, so it's not Captain Marvel. And just the way that she'd responded to Captain Marvel in the course of the show when she was brought up, I don't think she would have responded as excited as she was when she hears what the girl says. But she's like, well, where? And like they're just like up at the S.W.O.R.D station. And you're like, that's Nick Fury. Like she's gonna be in that Secret Invasion show. So I think that is our future for Monica, and I think we'll find out more about her powers and maybe her history and her background, and if it was indeed the Hex that created those powers, or if it was something that Monica already had. I think that'll probably get fleshed out somewhere in the course of Secret Invasion. So that's super exciting. Then that one ends after like the animated credits. Get all the way to the end credits, and we get one last scene where we see the camera out in this like mountain range, kind of like woodsy area. And the music that's playing is familiar, sounds familiar to Sokovia, and you're kind of wondering, like, is this like on the outskirts of Sokovia, like not where the city was that got destroyed, but like maybe in that area? Has she gone home? And then like as you see the camera swing in, and you see the cabin, it's at the base of a mountain, and the first thing I thought of was, please be Mount Wundagore. Like if that's Mount Wundagore and that's where she is, there could still be things in play to a big bad that could have influence on Wanda that could lead to stuff that happens in the Multiverse of Madness. Something much like we said, Chthon was trapped in Mount Wundagore. And I'm not going to start theorizing because we realize that didn't really work out too well for us. But I think that stuff could still be in play. And then when you see what's going on with Wanda, it makes me even more sure that kind of like some sort of other entity that could be a Mephisto or a Chthon type, doesn't necessarily mean them, but whatever this big bad will be for Doctor Strange 2 is probably going to have some kind of influence on Wanda, making it look like she is again a big bad, or just having access to the Darkhold is going to do that. Because as we come in, we see Wanda sitting on the steps, and this is kind of odd. She's holding a coffee mug, and then you hear the tea kettle going off for the hot water. What is she holding the mug for? Like, I thought that was weird. So she gets up and goes in, and you're like, okay, she must just be, like, taking time to herself. And then she's, like, dealing with the hot water, and the camera goes by her and goes into the back room. You're like, where are we going? And floating there in the sky, or not in the sky, in the room, just floating in the room, twisting magic, like you can see magical spells or things kind of happening around her as she reads the Darkhold. Wanda got a hold of the Darkhold after she left, I guess, and she's studying it. And I think the fact that she is studying the Darkhold means potential bad things for Wanda. Like, and the fact that there are two Wandas in this place, that just tells you that, like, for me, what that screams, she's learning magic now. Like, she doesn't just do magic. Now she's learning spells, learning incantations that she can use. Maybe as a test, tried to do something and created a second version of herself. And it almost feels like one of those things where, like, very similar to Doctor Strange, when he can kind of leave his body and consume information while his physical body is sleeping. She's not astral projecting, but it's like, did she take all of the whatever she has left to process, whether it's at the back end of the grief or just figuring herself out or finding herself is, did she separate all that from her and put it into a physical being that could do that stuff that would be a distraction to the Scarlet Witch learning everything that she needs to learn to find her kids? Like, that could lead to bad, like, if that's what happened, if she separated potentially some of the good out of her so she can focus on learning this stuff, that could lead to bad Wanda, or lead to a vulnerable version of Wanda that could maybe be not, I don't know if I'd go full on possessed, but could definitely be influenced by an outside evil force. And clearly, whatever she is doing is she's trying to figure out how she can bring those boys back or find those boys' souls. Like, she must have some kind of feeling like they're out there. And sure enough, we hear them screaming out, like, "Mom, help, help!" And like all of a sudden her, like, study look goes, woo, and she moves, and like she looks like pissed. So I don't know, like, could that be opening the multiverse? Could that, like, is she looking for the kids somewhere else? Is the magic that she's producing gonna be the thing that has her create them and keep them? Could that tie into, a bigger character? I don't know, but I think that tease is the thing that gets us excited for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and that whatever Wanda is doing with the Darkhold is probably going to lead to whatever makes her seem like she's the bad guy again. But we've talked for a very long time, and I'm glad you guys stuck around. I hope you used the chapter markers to jump around and hit the different things. But this show really was something special. And yes, the main theories didn't pan out. And no, we didn't learn things about how the multiverse is going to happen, or have like a tease that we can definitely tie and theorize cleanly. Like, this will definitely be this. I think, like classic Marvel, they gave us teases that give us enough of a like general sense where we might be able to figure out where we could be going. And we got the Falcon and the Winter Soldier coming up next. I don't think that will tie so much into the magic realm of the MCU, but maybe it ties into the science realm. I'm not saying that we're going to see Vision, but maybe that realm of a non-magical bad guy maybe could be attached to that show. Definitely is going to dive more into Falcon and Winter Soldier and Baron Zemo. So I'm pumped to see all that stuff play out. But yeah, we'll have to go through that show, and then we'll go through Loki. And then after Loki, it'll be Spider-Man, and then Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And, hopefully by then we'll start seeing a clearer picture as to what Phase 4 could be and how we get to the multiverse. But just because we don't know that now does not take away from the brilliance and the genius that was WandaVision. Like I said, I love this show to death. I love what it made me do. I loved diving in deep and theorizing, and like all that stuff was fun. So if Kevin Feige and Marvel wanted to, have fun with, the comic book nerds and layer things in that were tons of red herrings or dead ends, kudos to you, man, because you know what? I had a hell of a fun time trying to figure out where we were going to go, and I'm kind of happy that we didn't end up someplace that we had theorized, man. You gave me an ending I didn't see coming, and it tells the perfect origin story for the Scarlet Witch and the perfect story of Wanda dealing with her grief and her relationship to the Vision. So I loved WandaVision. I love the finale. I still think the Halloween episode is probably my favorite episode from the series, but this did everything it was supposed to do, man. Hit on the emotional beats, gave us wonderful spectacle, big time battle, and something that was fun to watch. Part of me wishes there was more. We could have a little bit more time. But overall, I think this thing works like a gem. And I promise you, if you watched the episode today and you felt a little cheated or a little gypped because like what you were thinking or what you were hoping for you didn't get, watch the whole show as one entity. And I promise you, it will hit so much better than just watching it as a standalone episode. I don't know because I didn't watch it as a standalone. I watched it as a full entity. But like when you watch it in like the binge mode, that story really hits really well, and I loved WandaVision, and I am so excited for wherever we head next in Phase 4. That's it, man! Those are all the C-Man spoiler thoughts on WandaVision, Episode 9, the series finale, which could be true. They might come back. Feige is kind of leaving it kind of out there as like, well, maybe it could. We'll see what happens. And we will see what happens, but for now, those are all my thoughts, man. I love this show. I'm so glad it exists. I'm so glad we got to do all the things we got to do, having fun trying to figure this show out, and still having the show win. Like, Kevin Feige, at the end of the day, he's the top of the top, man, and he continues to just prove that with the material that he's putting out. And this, again, really, really, like some of the best stuff I've ever seen in Marvel. So those are all my spoiler thoughts. We might dive in more on, like I said, those post-credits later on, probably tomorrow. There's a bunch of content. I got Raya and the Last Dragon. We got Coming to America. All sorts of stuff coming up. So we will definitely still be active all day long. So be on the lookout for more content. But I'm done talking. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to let you talk, man. What did you think of WandaVision? First and foremost, what did you think of the finale? Where did it land for you in the course of the season? What did you like about the finale? What did you not like about the finale? Did you feel gypped or cheated because it felt like Marvel was literally poking us as the bear and, ended up delivering something that felt like it was building certain things and then just didn't hit those? Did that have an impact on you? Or like myself, were you able to go, good on you, Marvel. You got me. You got me a lot of times. And you know what? The story that you still told was really, really freaking good. Anything that you're thinking about the episode, about the series as a whole? What did you think of the story for Wanda? What did you think of the story for Vision? What do you think we could see going forward from this, based on the post-credits? Do you hope Agatha comes back? How long till we see the kids again? Anything you're thinking about. Maybe Mephisto or Chthon or somebody still in the background you think that could still be going on. Anything you got, good, bad, indifferent, or theorizations on WandaVision and the MCU Phase 4, down below in the comments section. I look forward to talking to you guys down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out for this with the Seaman as we approach Falcon and the Winter Soldier next. Any other Marvel content, we got, Zack Snyder's Justice League coming up. Like I said, a whole bunch of new stuff that dropped today. I'm going to try to watch and get up reviews on. You want to be here for all that. Maybe you just stumbled onto the page. Maybe you've come here a few times. You like what we're doing. Hey, man, you can show your love and support to the old Seaman by jumping over there, hitting that subscribe button. You can come join the Seamaniac Nation. Hit that little bell if you want those alerts. If you don't want to do that, totally cool. I just hope we see you come on back and give it another go. But until then, and until the next time we sit down to talk some Marvel stuff, which thankfully won't be very long. For the Seaman Cinema Sit Down, I've been the Seaman. Thank you so much for riding with me during WandaVision. This was one of my favorite experiences as far as covering a show, and the interaction I've had with you guys was just awesome. So thank you so much if you rode with me the whole way, part of the way. Just thanks for coming along on this journey and making it something special for me. But until then, we talk again and we see each other. I've been the Seaman. I'm signing off. Peace!
Oh, hey, what's going on? You must be sticking around because you're looking for more content featuring this guy. Well, guess what? You're in the right place. You can check out more videos right here and right here. And if you have and you want to come join that Seamaniac Nation, you can hit that subscribe right over there.